All right. Well, happy Friday and welcome back to another Future Focused weekly update where we are living at the intersection of business, tech, human experience with the stated goal of keeping you 10 steps ahead. I've got a rundown of my usual updates. As always, it is getting cooler here. For those of you who are not from the Midwest, temperatures are dropping as winter is coming, the inevitable winter. It's been a wild week this week. But if you enjoy this or you find it helpful, please like, share, comment, do all those good things, regardless of where you're consuming it from. If it's your first time, I hope you find this helpful and share it with a friend. I always appreciate others finding out about it and always fun to hear stories from folks. And if you have a story or something interesting that's popped up in your feed that you're like, hey, have you heard about this? Or what do you think about this? Send it my way. Every once in a while, somebody sends something along, or I'll be in conversation with somebody and things will come up, and then it impacts what makes it onto the list. So let's get started with this one. I've got the first two actually. A couple weeks ago, I think it was Meta and the Zuckster was one of the big people I was talking about. This week, Musk and his suite of companies has a couple of the spots. So the first one was I'm curious for those of you who are out there, if you saw the SpaceX Starship catch. It was funny. I came across it and I've always, you can probably guess my age if you've seen my videos, or you probably can be at least relatively close. But needless to say, I was not around when the moon landing happened. And one of the things that was always interesting to me was watching videos of like the moon landing and people like freaking out and flipping out and getting super excited about it. And I always kind of thought, what's the big deal? Like, I don't know. And maybe because it just wasn't part of my history. But watching the Starship catch, I've still got feelings, and I'll share those about space exploration and all this other stuff. But watching that thing come in from outer space and like so perfectly come in and be caught by the tower it took off from, I pretty much almost wanted to stand up and cheer when I saw it, because that was just a incredible feat of technology. The fact that a rocket can take off, fly out into the atmosphere, and then come back and with a more accurate landing than my drone, that was absolutely incredible. And it is interesting as we think about this, what does it mean for the possibilities of whether it's space exploration, commercial space travel, things like that. It definitely is impressive to see how far we're coming. Now, that does open up the question for me that I ended up sitting wrestling with of like, what is this doing for us though? Because one of the things that was a little bit tough for me whenever I watch some of these rocket launches is, all this fuel, this combustion blasting out into the atmosphere, and all, so what? We can watch and go, cool, neat, more carbon emissions. So we can watch how amazing we are at launching rocket ships. I mean, again, part of me is like, that's part of innovation, is things like that have to happen. But part of me is also like, what's at the end of this? And that's one thing I'm still not 100% clear on in terms of space exploration. You may have a different opinion on it. You may be somebody on the complete other end who doesn't even think space exploration is real. But my point is, putting all that stuff aside, I tend to always be thinking about, where is this going? What is our desired outcome from this? And as cool as it was to see the rocket take off and then come back and like be perfectly captured by the tower and marvel at the technology, I can't help still struggle going, to what end? What is this doing for us? And you'll see sci-fi stuff of, well, we'll colonize Mars, we'll colonize the moon. And I go, yeah, really though? Is that really going to be a thing? Because anybody who knows anything about the moon or Mars, it's not a pleasant environment. So unless you're someone who dreams of living in an abandoned nuclear bunker and never seeing the light of day again, I don't know a lot of people who go, you know what I would give up? Living here on planet Earth where I can go outside without a spacesuit. I can lay in the sun and take in the UV rays without being scorched to crispy bacon. I can, you know, enjoy things without getting caught in a sandstorm or always worrying that everything around me is going to kill me. I just don't know a lot of people that go, that's what I want. If only we could get to that. And yes, people joke about it when they say, if XYZ gets elected, I'd gladly move to Mars. Yeah, it's easy to say, but would you really want to live in a bunker where you can't do anything for the rest of your life and can't even grow your own food? I mean, if you watched, again, my kid's coming out, but like we watched a while back, the Mr. Beast, somebody spends so many days, 60 days in a bunker or something. And I watched the living conditions of this whole thing. And I'm like, yeah, this doesn't look very good. This doesn't look very interesting. It doesn't look very appealing. And so when I think about having no choice but to do that, like, fine, you signed up to do it for allegedly some money, but you only had to do it for 60 days. You can do it for the rest of your life. And then if you decide you don't want to stay there, you got to try and take a rocket ship back, which is still going to take better part of a year to get home. To me, the practicality of it, and maybe somebody else, if you're different, if you've got a different opinion, if you go, I would go live on the moon tomorrow, I'd be interested to hear your thinking. I'd really be interested to hear your perspective on, what about that? What is really appealing to that? Because I would challenge somebody who really truly thought that, like, go live off the grid in a remote area or go camping. And I talk to people who are big into camping. I've got some good friends, big campers. I used to be big into backpacking, going out into the mountains, whatever. But boy, there was something pretty incredible when you got to come back to your car and take a hot shower and, go swing by McDonald's and grab a Big Mac. I mean, there was just something about it where you're like, yeah, I mean, I like this, but I also like modern civilization. So I just really struggle with how much money is being poured into space exploration, how much environmental damage we're doing with space exploration, how much, and not just from the rocket taking off, but the raw materials that have to be stripped from the earth to create these things and launch these things. And I just kind of go, okay, also we can have our look at what we did moment. I don't know. I struggle with it. But at the same time, like I said, when that spaceship came in and got caught by the thing, despite all my feelings about the ridiculousness of space travel and where we're going with it, I still stood up as my kids were sitting right there and we all ran up to the TV and we're like, no way. Did you see that? That's incredible. But I'm like, couldn't we put that technology to use? I don't know, on something better. I don't know. Anyway, enough on that one. So let's switch over to Tesla's We Robot event. If you didn't see this, check it out. Google Tesla's We Robot event. And it was this big, fancy, Hollywood-esque, it was actually on a Hollywood movie studio. If you've seen videos or pictures from it, I mean, it was totally stereotypical Hollywood glam, all for, the paparazzi and show and all this. And in that same vein, it was a very Hollywood-esque type event in that there's a whole lot of hot air and smoke and mirrors going on at this thing. Nothing is as it seems at the event, and more of that is starting to come out. Now, there were two big things at the event, and it was a little bit of like, here's the future. Come to the We Robot event and see the future is now, that kind of whole marketing thing around it. And so at the We Robot event, there's the CyberCab was the big thing, like, look, CyberCab, the future of transport, the CyberCabs, it's going to be $30,000 for these things. And you're never going to have to drive anywhere. They're just going to pick you up. They're going to be autonomous. We're going to have autonomous vehicles everywhere. And then you get into the event and there's Tesla bots just walking around everywhere. They're serving you your drinks and they're engaging you in conversation and, all this stuff. And I mean, again, videos, pictures, well done. Well done. It looks cool. It's neat. It's, again, on the surface level, kind of like the rocket being captured by the tower. You go, wow, what an incredible marvel in modern technology and where the near future will be. But then once the glitz and the glam kind of wears off and the endorphins get out of your system and you start going, all right, now what really is going on here? Now they're already starting to take criticism on the whole event for a couple reasons. So I'll focus on the Tesla bots first, and then we'll go, Tesla bot, and then we'll go to the CyberCab. So the Tesla bot, one of the things that people picked up on right away was the way these bots were talking with guests. People were like, and at first it felt like, wow, what an innovation. This whole new model of AI conversation is so human-like. And then it was almost one of those, people started going, wait a minute, it is so human-like. In fact, it sounds and feels like I'm talking to a human, which grew suspicions, which were then later confirmed that, well, I mean, the Tesla bots were being controlled remotely. And you were talking to a human. You weren't talking to AI. And suddenly that starts casting some shade on things like, oh, wait. And this is what happens once the veneer starts falling off. All of a sudden you start seeing like, oh, the drywall's rotten. The 2x4 studs are starting to fall apart. Like things start coming. Oh, the electric is actually just a bunch of power cords, extension cords run through the wall. And you start to see that, oh, this isn't quite the glitz and the glam on the event. Now, to be fair, to my knowledge and looking into this, the Tesla bots were actually, AI was controlling them moving around and doing certain things, which I kind of suspected based on the video. It wasn't like wait staff, human wait staff. Like if you cared about efficiency and experience, you probably wouldn't want a bunch of these Tesla bots running your restaurant. And the videos were pretty, I mean, you just watch a video, you'd be like, oh, yeah, I don't know that I would want to, unless I was just doing this as a spectacle, which is what this was. You wouldn't want these AI bots as your server, trust me. But they wanted it to feel human, and they know AI can't feel human. And so they had people at microphones like talking. So, the wallpaper's falling off a little bit and you're like, oh, okay, not quite what it seems. And then the CyberCabs. So then it gets to the CyberCabs. And again, it looks cool. It's neat. These fancy gold cars are pulling up and doing all this stuff autonomously. And then if you don't know who Marquise Brownlee is, he's a YouTuber, and he kind of dug into the smoke and mirrors on the CyberCabs, like how, because the claim was like, we are on the verge of these things. $30,000 are going to be everywhere. It's going to take over autonomous vehicles. And, that's it. Nobody's going to drive anywhere ever again. And he starts poking holes in it a little bit. So some of his stuff, and I won't get into all of his critique, but he's legit on this. He was looking at it. His primary take on it was just the design impracticality of some of this, and even some of the, so how exactly would you say this is going to work again? So, all the vehicles, they've got like 2 seats. You're like, well, I mean, as a dad of 8 and a wife, family of 10, I don't know. I'd have to have a minimum of 5 just to do anything. That's not terribly practical. So he's going, all right. He's kind of picking apart the doors, going, these Lambo doors aren't super ideal for anything. There's no rear visibility in it. There's 0 manual overrides in this. So while all for, the idealistic, wouldn't it be great if you never had anything and could just trust AI 100%? Like, you built that into the design, that there's no way if things goes off the rails to intervene. Like, what if it just dies and you just need somebody to move it. You literally can't do anything with this, which if you followed anything about autonomous vehicles, they don't have the best track record. Let's just say that. They can do some cool stuff, but even people who are very pro autonomous vehicles that I've talked to are like, yeah, but I always want to have the ability to take over if something's not going right, or if something's malfunctioning, or a light comes on and maybe I just don't feel very good. Or even just personally, I know tons of driving enthusiasts. I myself sometimes just like to get in my Suburban and go for a drive for no reason other than just to be behind the wheel, feel like I'm in control in my own world. The world is my oyster and I can go out and just drive around for a little bit. And so to say, we're going to completely get rid of the possibility of that, I think there's a lot of people who would go, yeah, I don't know that I like that. And then when you look at how these things are charged, this is one of the things Marquise got rightfully so. It's like, how do you charge them? Oh, well, they are wirelessly charged. There's no external port to charge this thing. So all the roads will just have wireless stuff in them. And you go, our infrastructure is not set up this way at all. Like, what are we going to rip up every road on the planet to try and make this thing work? Like, how's that going to happen? And granted, one of the things I think we have to be careful of, and I know having worked in the corporate sector for a long time, that can be frustrating, is when people have really cool ideas like this, and then people are just pissing all over them. Yeah, well, that's not going to work because you didn't do that. Why didn't you think of that? Oh, that's dumb. You can't have that. And that's really frustrating. And I get it. And it would be easy to pick apart any innovation. I mean, I remember being one of the people who was responsible for convincing organizations to implement mobile smartphones at the time. And people did the same thing. Mobile smartphones. Who wants more than a phone on their phone? What a stupid idea. Yeah, well, look where we are now. So I think we have to be careful that we don't completely dismiss everything. But if you know anything about the Cybertruck, I mean, let's just say Tesla doesn't have the best track record of thinking through some of the practicalities of how does this work in the real world. This may sound great and work great in concept, in a complete hyper, idealized, everything's designed around this working. Yeah, then it works great. But that's not the world we live in. We live in a broken, dysfunctional world where nothing goes according to plan. And even when the response to, so how would you handle this? There is no response, or it hasn't been considered. That's a problem. I mean, I just think, going back to the Cybertruck one, not only have people seen the things where like it's breaking people's fingers in the hoods and, stuff like that, but even Whistling Diesel he's a YouTuber where, it supposedly has this towing capacity and all this stuff. And he proved the thing, like, you pull a trailer too hard, it'll literally snap the whole frame and send your trailer smashing into you. And that's in light use. So again, it's not that we should tear apart every objection. And I tend to be more of the, let's go for it and see what happens. But I actually really appreciate when people start thinking about this stuff and going, yeah, but what about this? Or what about this? So that it at least forces you to go, that's a good point. We hadn't thought about that. How would we handle that? And it was pretty clear based on the We Robot event. A lot of those moments have not been happening. Or if they're brought up, it's never mind that. We're going to live in our utopian world that isn't real type of a thing. The final thing, though, that I would add on this, because I do see things based on where it is, even if it's not really going to be $30,000, even if it's not going to be released in early 2025, it's not going to take over the world in the next 18 months. I do think there is going to be, and will continue to be, there already is significant impact on jobs with this kind of stuff. And it's coming very quick. And I just think about the number of, people who drive Uber or Instacart drivers or all this other stuff. And you go, I mean, this really does have the potential to impact jobs at some point. And is the timeline, are we equipped to help people adapt in time? Because let's say, hypothetically, $30,000 CyberCabs can be purchased and used, and it works according to the specs and how the ideal situation. If that truly were the case, it would just wipe out a lot of drivers, because it'd be like, well, why would we? For 30 grand, I'll buy one and it'll take me wherever I need to go, at any point and whatever. And I'll just have Walmart drop the stuff in my car and then have it come right back. I don't need to pay Instacart to do it. I'll just have it. So it would dramatically change things. And I do think this is an area that, we aren't putting enough investment into, is helping people, one, and it's part of what I'm doing with this show, is to help people recognize, hey, this change is coming. It is, as much as I joke and make fun of this whole thing, this kind of stuff is coming. And there are people whose livelihoods depend on driving. And so what are we doing to help prepare them? How are we making sure they're aware this stuff's coming? How do we get companies to start thinking about, okay, so what could those people do? And how do we get those people prepared to go, these are the new skill sets you're going to need in this world? And I think that's something we need to spend a lot more time on. But that was not the focus. That was definitely not the focus of the We Robot event, unless you want to take into consideration your future job can be sitting behind a microphone like this, pretending to be a robot and talking to people. I don't know what you would call that job description, but there you go. There's a future job for 2025. All right, moving on. So Amazon's going nuclear, whatever, however you want to pronounce it. I'm sure somebody's going to say something in the comments about my pronunciation, but they're going big on this. This was announced this week. $500 million Amazon is pouring into a deal with Dominion Energy out in Virginia, which is a utility company, to push the development of modular nuclear reactors. And so basically think of these things as little like mini substations that can create the kind of energy that is needed to run the technology. Now, if you've listened to my stuff for any period of time, you know that one of the things I have serious concerns about with everything that's going on with AI and all this advanced tech is, how is this going to be powered? Because it's going to suck the life out. And it already is. Like, it's taking up more energy over the last couple years than we ever thought. And it's growing exponentially as more and more stuff keeps happening. Every time you prompt GPT, hey, tell me a funny story as a pirate, like, it's consuming fresh water and just sucking energy off the grid. And so Amazon's recognizing this, as are other big tech providers, going, we got to do something. And so the latest one is Amazon saying, all right, we're going to, invest in modular nuclear power plants. And this one, I get and I don't. I personally feel like this is another area that we're in such a hurry to do things. We're not thinking through, yeah, but is there a better way to do this? Because I think back to a few weeks ago where I talked about someone, a kid, 22-year-old or something like that, who literally created a desktop fusion reactor using Anthropic's cloud AI. Built the thing for $2,000, mind you. And I went, hey, like, wow, is anybody talking to this kid and seeing, how did you do it? Can we replicate that? Because if you don't know the difference between fusion and fission, which nuclear power plants are fission is tearing atoms apart, which creates a lot of energy, but it also creates a lot of very deadly waste and is extremely destructive. Nuclear fallout, like we see all this stuff. You ever watched, look up Chernobyl or whatever, and it's not great. It's not great what happens when you tear atoms apart. And there's a lot of harmful materials that take a very long time to dispose of. In fact, if you look into this, we actually have certain places where they don't know what to do with all this stuff. They're just like, I know, let's just drop it into the center of the earth. It'll be fine. And so I think about this and go, wait, like we're in such a hurry to fix our power problems. We're just going to stand up mini nuclear reactors all over the place, creating tons and tons more of this nuclear waste. Now, granted, I will say I would have been much more disappointed had I seen Amazon is investing $500 million in seeking out new, coal factories and coal mines and things like that, where I'd be like, really? Like, if you're going to go with something, I guess I'm happy that you're going with nuclear over burning fossil fuels. So kudos to Amazon in that front. But I just feel like we can't do better than this. We can't do better than, why don't we invest heavily in clean energy? Why don't we maybe slow down the advancement of some of this stuff a little bit and go, you know what, we really got to get this power thing under control. We've got to get this power. Let's throttle this. Not that we slow down our innovation or development, but let's throttle this in terms of consumer use or price it at a point where it's not accessible to everybody so that we aren't just consuming every bit of power on the planet while we really heavily invest in this. But if a kid in a matter of weeks can build a $2,000 fusion reactor, which fusion, smashing of atoms together, exponentially more energy than fission, and oh, by the way, doesn't create toxic, lethal nuclear waste that you've got to figure out what to do with. So we know a better source. We know better. So we know clean energy. We know, there's other geothermal. Like there are other ways we can do this, but they just aren't as mainstream. And I'm guessing Dominion Energy's probably not in the business of clean energy or, fusion innovation. And so it's a little disappointing to go, I get maybe what we're trying to do is meet the need. And we can all relate to this where we need something and we just, in our impulsiveness, will just go and try and grab the quickest thing that we can find to meet that need. Instead of going, let's slow down a little bit. Let's see if there's better ways. Let's ask the question, do we need to do this now? Like, are we at a point where we really need to stand up modular nuclear power plants all over Virginia? Are we there yet? Because if not, or what do people think about this? Like, let's get some input on this. Do people really want this at the expense of that? Which people probably would, because gosh, we can't go without our smartphones for 8 hours. Heaven forbid we go without generative AI for a couple of years. But my point is, it's very disappointing. And I get it, and I get where it's going, and I get what's driving it. But this to me is one of those, again, situations where innovation at all costs, achieving the bottom line at any expense, and thinking no further than the tip of our nose on, but what could go wrong with this? It's not like a nuclear power plant has ever had things go wrong. Like, how is this going to be managed? What are we going to do with all this nuclear waste? Like, and granted, it's a new deal and there's not a lot of stuff into that. But, and again, it looks on the surface like it's doing the right thing because Amazon's promoting this as part of our pathway to net zero carbon emissions. Ta-da, herald us as the innovator of doing this well. And I don't know, maybe it's because I grew up on The Simpsons and watched Homer almost eliminate Springfield far too many times. And I know the technology in nuclear has come a long way, so I won't pretend that a lot of that technology has also advanced. So it is certainly, like I said, compared to other alternatives, I do want to say, I think, better this than that. But I just wish, and maybe I just need to spend a little more time digging into it. It just feels much more, though, like we're just pursuing the end goal without really taking the time to figure out, is this the right end goal? And is this a path that we absolutely need to take? And do the benefits outweigh the risks? And I personally am not convinced. Looking at this, I'm not convinced. I don't think this is the right path. But we'll see where it goes. And if you live in Virginia, if you're a big landowner in Virginia and you don't mind the idea of a radioactive thing that could completely annihilate you sitting in your backyard. Maybe you can lease out your land and you'll find a new revenue source. And maybe that way, then you can quit your Instacart job because the CyberCabs are going to take it over. And so that's your new job, is leasing land to the energy company for modular nuclear power. I don't know. Anyway, on a more serious note, I mean, I guess all this stuff is relatively serious. If you followed me, you know that I've talked about one of the big risks I see with AI that is just kind of being glossed over. Honestly, I don't see much about it at all, is its use in adult entertainment. And not even just in the adult entertainment industry, but truly like for personal use, exploiting people. And it's horrific. And this one, I'm not going to go back through all my points. You can feel free to go back. One of my more popular videos on here is why using AI in adult entertainment is not a good, it's not a good path. It's not a good plan. So if you want to know where I stand on this, and if you've listened to me, you also know where I come from a worldview. This isn't just, conservative, or, Christopher, you're just too conservative on this. It's not. It's objective. And I have a lot of secular people who do not share my worldview that completely agree with this. So don't take my word on it. Just go out, look at the consequences and impact of adult entertainment on society. And then this thing we're going to talk about right now, I don't even think I need to do much convincing to convince you that this is really bad. But go take a look. You don't have to believe me. You don't have to trust me and take my word at it. The data's there. But I'm a very staunch advocate that the use of AI for adult entertainment, there's not if we do it this way, it's good. It's not. It's not. It's only going to make a big problem worse. And today's story is a perfect example of that. Now, if you're not familiar with undressing apps or Nudify apps, basically what they're designed to do is it's AI that's designed to take an image, soon or already there video of a person, and be able to convert it into nude images and videos of people. So you don't even need them to be, and this is where I say it's not even adult entertainment anymore. Now you're just talking about like some random person you snap a picture of on the street. If you want to see what they, look like without clothes on, or you want to put them in compromising videos, and so you can do it with the click of a button. And it's disgusting. It's honestly disgusting, and it's horrific. And the impact it has and the way it's been used to exploit people are being, blackmailed with things that aren't even them using this technology. Young girls especially are vulnerable to this. They're being bullied and having their lives ruined. Somebody I just saw the other day, like a girl took her own life because kids at school thought it'd be funny to do this, and completely just terrorized her to the point where she ended her own life. Like, it's not funny. It's not funny. There's no value to any of this. And it's exploding in popularity. I mean, exploding in popularity and use. And so back in 2020, there was a deep fake expert. His name was Henry Ajder. Let me look. AJD Ajder. Anyway, he saw this and was like, I'm going to look into this and try and see like how big of a problem is this. And Telegram, if you know what Telegram is, it's I don't know how to describe it. It's kind of one of these, like, we're the social media that has no governance. You can do whatever you want on here and we won't bother you, which, just think about, there's a reason why terms and conditions and community guidelines can be a good thing. But Telegram was one that's like, no, we don't do that. You can use it however you want. And so back in 2020, so this was even before Gen AI had really, really hit the market. There were about 100,000 deep fake images of people that, were some minors, all this stuff. So there was already a problem back in 2020. So it's not like a brand new Gen AI thing. And I mean, this isn't new. Even back when I was a kid, I remember, buddies talking about websites of like, celebrity fakes and, all this stuff. So it's not a new thing. It's just as disgusting and wicked as it's always been, but it's not new. But what's terrifying is, so in 2020, there was only 100,000 of these things out there. Now, in the course of 4 years, there's 4 million users of this stuff. So before it was like 100,000, less than a million. And over the course of 4 years, that's jumped to 4 million regular active users of this. So before it was just like, this isn't even comparing apples to apples necessarily, because before it was like, this is all there was. Now this is like active use generating their own. So that 100,000 is probably in the tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of actual images that now have been created by these bots, because there were 50 bots that they were able to discover that are created on Telegram for no purpose other than this. They identified 50 bots that are on there for the sole purpose of, hey, you want to take an image or a video of somebody and turn it into adult entertainment? Why not? Because we don't say anything. We don't have any community guidelines around this. Why not? And this is just on one platform. And so it's extremely concerning to me for, a multitude of reasons, some of which I've already said, like the damage that this is going to cause to people, not only the people who are impacted, who have their images turned into things that they go, that wasn't me. Like, I just think about some of the stories I've read of like people who've been blackmailed, where it's like, oh, hi, you committed, you cheated on your wife or whatever. And here's the picture of it. And it's like, that never even happened. That's not even a real thing. But it can be created. And now you're debating with somebody over something that isn't even real. So I see this, I see the excessive use. This is a major problem in like schools right now. The whole undressing apps to bully and harm kids is a big thing. But you think about its use for people being able to truly exploit anyone they want now with zero to no knowledge of them even knowing it. You might not even know that this is happening to you. And there's probably all over on the dark web, stuff like that. And it's can be done in the click of a button. And so it's unfortunate. And I think there needs to be more attention focused on, hey, what do we do about this? Like, how do we stop this kind of use of AI? Because there's no benefit. There's no, yeah, well, but isn't it great? Because now what? What is the tangible benefit? What is the upside to this? I cannot come across one. And I think we need to have people speaking up about this is a serious problem. And the problem is a lot of people don't want to speak up about it because in the back of their mind, they're kind of like, I kind of like the idea of being able to do that. And if that's where you're at, I would really challenge you. It's not okay to exploit someone at your own, and it's not harmless. It's not like, oh, well, I didn't even have to do anything because now I could just take a picture of them and just get the one I want. And people are not objects to be exploited for your own pleasure, period. Human beings are not. That is not okay under any circumstances. And so if you're still in the camp of like, I don't really see what the issue is here, what's the big deal? Nobody's getting hurt. People are getting hurt. Never mind the fact that it's just not okay to treat people like that. And how would you feel if that was your wife or your daughter or your spouse? Like, how would you feel? How would you feel if you got blackmailed by something you didn't even do, or a very embarrassing, compromising picture of you that isn't even real? And now you're trying to explain to everybody that that's not a real thing. And they're going, yeah, right. I bet it is it's very easy to see things on one side until it happens to you. And so we need to talk about this more. We need to, please don't go out and Google this stuff. Don't be like, oh, I got to go check out one of these apps. Please don't even for like, just don't. I don't give it airtime to try and draw attention to it so much to say this is a serious problem and it is on the rise big time. And I think it's why we need to have more conversations about it to first get everybody on the same page that this isn't beneficial. This isn't good for anyone. It is only causing harm. So then how do we regulate? How do we moderate? How do we shut this kind of stuff down? So a little disappointing to see just how big it's getting in such a short period of time. And if we don't do something, it's only going to get worse. All right. Last and final one. I came across an interview with Meta's their AI chief scientist or something like that. What was his name? I can't remember his name off the top of my head. His last name is LeCun, I think. Well, hang on. Now I'm looking at it. Good grief. Oh, Jan LeCun. So anyway, he's their AI top chief scientist. And he was asked, hey, where are we in terms of AI and its human level reasoning? Because that's the big thing right now. We are so close. It's kind of like the Tesla We Robot event. Like we're on the brink. We're almost to ASI, and these things can think and act and behave like humans. And he was asked directly about it. And he's like, yeah, no, we're not. We are nowhere near human level reasoning. And his prediction is a decade. Okay. Which I personally don't think we're ever going to get there. But for Meta's chief scientist, who's like on the cutting edge of all of this, involved with all this stuff, to go, we ain't even close. We're a decade out, which when you think about a decade right now, in a time when I feel like I say something last week, then I look this week and go, yeah, that's not really where things are at because it's evolved. So when weeks can feel like decades, a decade is an eternity. So for him to say, yeah, it's going to be at least a decade before we get to it. And the models we have today, they can't even do it. So his stance is not only we're a long way from it, but the technology and the way things are structured today, they're not even capable of it. So that's where these promises that like, oh, these LLMs, they're just on the brink, we're about to hit it. He's like, no, we're not. And even the architecture of this technology is fundamentally incapable of even achieving human level reasoning. And the thing he talks about is, and this is the part where, it gets a little philosophical. I was talking to somebody this week, sorry, I'm sidetracked here, but I was talking to somebody this week about the fact that philosophy and ethics and things like that are going to become a significantly rising need, because so much of this stuff is like, well, how else do we deal with it? It's not a checkbox problem. But so what he said is, we need machines that can truly understand the world. Now, his proposal is, and again, this is a proposal. So if you're thinking human level AI is like right around the corner, he's like, we don't even have this yet. And even what we need, the models we have today aren't even capable of it. And what we need to get there hasn't even been invented. So this gives you an idea of the order of magnitudes of how far we are away from this. Okay, everything we have, incapable, fundamentally incapable. What we would need is nothing more than a theory or a hypothesis right now, and we have nothing in this. And his reason behind it is, he's like, machines need to actually understand. And I just said this last week. They need intuition and common sense. They need reasoning skills. And that's not what the technology we have is. LLMs today, the large language models today, it's just predictive. It's just looking at what you asked, and then based on all the data that it has, is just predicting what it thinks the best next set of tokens would be. And some people go, well, what about video? What about images? Video and images is nothing more than pixels. So it has taken all of the images that it's been trained on, deconstructed them down into pixel structures, which I know for the human mind, this is like what the heck? Because for us, this just happens. Like our brains, our eyes, our minds, they just do this. We don't think about it. But AI is literally taking every image, breaking it down to the most basic pixel level, every little piece of data, and then it's able to look at all of that. And then when you say create an image of a man smoking a cigarette in a 1980s McDonald's hat it's going, all right, I've seen pixels of McDonald's, I've seen pixels of cigarettes, I've seen pixels of all of this. Based on what you just asked, I'm going to predictively reconstruct pixels that end up making that image. And that's all it's doing. Same with video. It's It's just doing that at scale. Well, it's not just one image. Now it's images and moving. And so then it's predicting what the next one will be after and putting it together. And so it's literally math. Like it's math. And so that's when I see things like, oh, AI is a lot. Last week I talked about Mo Gaudat. And, he's like, if there's something inside, it's conscious. And it's like, clearly he and Yan would not get along, because Yan would be like, dude, you're falling for this. Like, are you serious? It's math, buddy. It's predictive tokens. And it's even predicting that it should have a voice to make you think it's alive. Like, it's able to predict that simply because of what it's picked up on your cues or how it's being used and all this stuff. So that's where we're at. And so I hope to share some of that detail, because I do talk to people who are a little unnerved. They're maybe a little uncomfortable with where AI is and what it's capable of and what it might do. And hopefully that helps you go, oh, okay, all right. Like, it's not on the verge of, it's not seeing me. It's not feeling what I'm talking about. It's not experiencing things, which is yet another reason why don't get a AI counselor. Don't get anyway, I'm not going to get distracted with that. But the point is, it's a predictive math modeling system. So what's Jan's solution? He's like, well, we need a real world, a world model in which it's not just seeing things in terms of data and tokens. It's actually behaving. It's experiencing the world. It knows what's going on. And again, we're actually, like, I'm reading through some of his stuff and listening to this interview and going, you mean it becomes conscious? Like, that's the solution? We come up with a model in which the model becomes conscious? And it's like, well, if that's the solution, it's circular reasoning. Like, so the solution to having AI be more conscious is that it becomes more conscious, and then it's, do you see the circular logic with this? Which is where I'm going, this isn't going to happen. This is why we can't create AI that becomes human-like, because the solution to the problem is the problems. It just goes back and forth. Well, the way we make AI conscious is we get it conscious so that it thinks consciously, and then it can think and reason consciously. And you're like, yeah, but wait. It's like when I talk to people who say the universe just happened. And you're like, right, but what happened? Well, we don't know. And it's like, well, then how do you recreate it? Well, we don't know. And the same is true with AI. Okay, so you acknowledge, Jan, that we got to go back to, at some point, AI has to have this conscious spark. We have to develop a model of consciousness that then is the baseline by which we build the future AI on. And then that way it'll do it. And it's like, so we create AI consciousness so AI can be conscious. That's where I'm struggling when I think about this, is that when I listen to him, and it sounds, if you're not, it's easy to get sucked into this and go, wow, yeah, that does make perfect sense. There's so many big words and it's so stratospheric that you almost can kind of get to a point where you're like, oh yeah, that's right. If we just design a model that's conscious, then AI would be able to be conscious. And you're like, right. And that's the problem. We can't do that. And everything he said, there was no, as I went through this, it's not like, well, we've tested and we're close or anything. It's truly just a hypothesis. Now, believe me, if something changes, if we come up with a new model, I will happily examine it and eat my words. But I, for one, do not believe in any way, shape, or form we are ever going to get to a point where we create AI that is truly capable of human level behavior. I just don't think we can do it. And I think it goes back to the unique thing we can't explain that I call the imago Dei. There's just something that we are made in the image of our creator that cannot be replicated. It cannot be replicated by human hands. And we can try. And I think we're going to create some stuff already. I mean, he just debunked the current models. And even he's saying, like, yeah, but everything they're doing that looks conscious, it's fake. And I think that's what we're going to continue to see. So we'll see what happens. Hope you found this episode helpful. Hope you have a wonderful Friday and rest of your day. And we will see you on the other side.